37 options. Greek, Icelandic, non-fat, low-fat, protein-packed, oat-based, vanilla, blueberry, key lime pie. I stood in front of the yogurt aisle for 10 minutes, and I walked away empty-handed. Now I remember thinking to myself, this is ridiculous. Why is this so hard? It's yogurt. But it wasn't just yogurt. It was a decision. And somehow, the more choices I had, the more difficult it became to make one. And I realized that this is not because we're weak. It's because we were taught how to perform. We're not taught how to want. We're taught how to maximize, how to curate the most efficient, optimized, and missions-worthy version of ourselves. At one point, I had 5 tabs open. One for an internship, conducting research that I could only mildly explain by kind of waving my hands around and hoping people would just nod along and pretend like, they understood it. One for a finance firm that probably wouldn't want a 16-year-old girl working there anyway. One with my nonprofit. One for a random children's book I was writing on a whim. And one with a dog titled, "What the heck am I doing?" Now I toggled between them for days, weeks, months, trying to choose the right thing, and quietly fearing that no matter what I chose, I'd disappoint someone, especially myself. Psychologist Barry Schwartz called this the paradox of choice. He argued that while choice and freedom is good, too much of it can actually lead us to feeling more stressed, anxious, and less satisfied with our decisions. Now, in order to test out how true this paradox of choice really was, I conducted an experiment a few months ago. I had 2 tables set up, table A and table B, and 30 participants for both the tables. Now, table A had just 2 chocolates, Kit Kat and Snickers, and I had each and every one of the participants go in one by one in this empty room, and I said, pick the best one, that's it. Now, table B participants had the same objective. Choose the best chocolate. But this time, they didn't have 2 options. They had 12. Caramel, nougat, dark chocolate, raspberry, mint, you get the idea. And not only that, but table B participants also had an audience. So I said, yes, certainly choose the best thing, but also keep in mind what other people would want too, because if the audience agrees with your decision on what the best chocolate is, then they'll cheer for you. But if they don't, they'll do the exact opposite, and they'll boo. But then I said, no pressure, obviously, make your own decision, right? No pressure. So after that, I made all 60 participants in total note down their satisfaction with their decisions on which was the best chocolate on a scale from 1 to 10. Now, not only did table B demonstrate a significantly lower satisfaction rating of 4.1 compared to table A, which only had to choose between a Kit Kat and Snickers, of 8.2, but they also took a lot longer to make a decision. Table A, who had to choose between those 2 chocolates, spent an average of around 6 seconds per person. Table B spent 46. Now, why? Why the disparity? Because when we have few choices, we choose and move on. But when we have 12, we overthink, we second guess, and we wonder if we chose wrong. Now that is the paradox. The first person who had to only choose between a Kit Kat and Snickers would have eaten a piece. But the second would have spent the entire day wondering if dark chocolate would have gotten more applause. And yes, I still had people emailing me after asking if they could change their answer over a piece of chocolate. Now, this shows us that we've confused the act of choosing with the act of proving. You chose a gap year, you only applied to those colleges, you picked that major, that job, that person. Each and every decision becomes a referendum on our intelligence, ambition, and morality. The choice doesn't just reflect our preferences, it defines our worth. Now, as you can assume, the people who think like this must have a significant mental, emotional, and physical stress that they take on. And as I've demonstrated, the people who feel this anxiety the most aren't the ones with the least choices. They're usually the ones with the most. For example, we think money will buy happiness. And many times, it does solve real problems, for sure. But after a point, it mostly just buys choices. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm sure all of us would love to have issues like, should I go to the Amalfi Coast or the Swiss Alps for my quick long weekend trip? But the more amazing each and every choice becomes, the stakes of getting something wrong skyrocket. I spent this summer teaching underserved students communication skills. Some in India, some in Nepal, some here in the United States. Now, they weren't debating over 37 extracurriculars. They weren't weighing 5 different Ivy League programs. They were deciding whether or not to speak at all. But still, they showed up. They made decisions, bold ones. And not because they had endless options, but because they knew what was important. Now, that is the irony of abundance. When you have more, you fear losing it. When you have less, you fight for what counts. Now, what if we redefined freedom? Not as the capability to just choose everything, but as the clarity to choose something without shame. What if success wasn't just about proving to others that you chose the best option, but about trusting that you made the right decision for who you are right now? I went back to the grocery store that week, and there were still 37 yogurts, but I chose the peach one. Not because it was the healthiest, or the trendiest, or the most macro balanced, but because I liked it. And in the moment, that was enough for me, and I really didn't want anything more. So perhaps the real freedom isn't in having every option, but it's in knowing how to choose and trusting that even if we choose the peach yogurt over the Greek triple cream, we'll be just fine. Thank you.